Well, welcome to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. You're listening to newstreamingnetwork.com, which is home of Going Solo and Going Bold. And we want to thank you for joining us here today on Going Solo, Life After Relationship Loss. And we're going to be talking about a great subject here today. We're going to be talking about trusting. How can we get our trust back? How can we do that? And we've got a terrific guest with us today. But before we introduce her, I'd like to share with you who I am. I am Cece Shatz. I am fondly called the Doyenne of Relationship Building. I'm a divorce, dating, and a life coach connecting singles through our Going Solo Network. So you can find all of my information on goingsolonetwork.com. And if you want to send me an email, I would love to get it because I answer all my emails personally. You just send it to goingsolonetwork at gmail.com. And I love to get your emails. I want to thank everyone for responding to us and sending us those emails and watching our shows. We do appreciate it. You'll find all of our shows on Roku, Facebook, YouTube, all your podcast stations, and again on our WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. Now let's get on to our subject because it's an important one. We're talking about finding trust again after heartbreak with our wonderful guest, Tracy. Tracy, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, we love having you. You've been a kind of a regular guest here with us, and we want to thank you so much for that, giving your time and everything, Tracy Malone. Tracy, you are a life coach, and you are the founder of narcissisticabusesupport.com. And so tell us a little bit about your passion, because I know you have been helping people for years get through some of the darkest times in their lives. And we want to talk about trusting here today, but I'd like them to know a little bit about you and why you really create and do all that you do to support others through this very difficult time of relationship loss.
Thank you so much. So I am a surTHRIVER of narcissistic abuse, and I didn't learn until I was late in life. And I was like, how could I have lived this long and not known and been a victim my whole life? So I started my website and my YouTube channel to educate people. As I was being educated, I pushed it out and taught the world what I was learning. And my passion comes from the pain that all of these victims are going through. So I teach, coping mechanisms and healing mechanisms, and it all helps people grow.
Wow. Thank you so much for all that you do, because I know you help many and have helped many over the years. And so I appreciate you and being on our channel, several times. And we want to thank you for your support and everything you do with us. We totally appreciate you. So let's talk about trust, because this is a really hard subject for many after they come through a relationship loss, especially if they have been in maybe an abusive or controlling relationship. They really start questioning not only themselves, but everything around them. So how do we start trusting again after betrayal and abandonment? Why is it so difficult? And how do we make that first step?
Well, I think it's difficult because we have to get past the evidence of how trusting someone that was untrustworthy didn't work out so well, right? We've given our trust away in many situations. And once we've given it away and it gets abused, then we doubt ourselves. We doubt our trusting radar. We're like, I'm broken. I don't know if it's me or what, but the truth is you might have trusted an untrustworthy person, right? So we need to build back a way that is going to give you almost a trust policy. What breaks your trust? What makes your trust? If you don't have those criteria in your head, people are going to do things and you're not going to be able to stand up for yourself because you haven't actually thought it through. You know when they hurt you, and you probably have had it happen 1,000 times, but you don't necessarily understand that when someone does this, that breaks my trust. When someone does this, they build it. And so, when I teach this and when I teach it to people, I say, well, how do you trust people? Like, do you just walk up and say, hi, nice to meet you? I did. I gave away my trust every single time. And when they would break it, I would be hurt. Not like, no, that's not okay. And so learning what's okay and what's not okay is the criteria for how we learn to trust somebody. And you have to remember that trust takes years to build and seconds to break and forever to repair. And so if you don't have a trust policy, as I'm calling it, then you're going to go down the same rabbit hole that you've been down, because you have to look at your own trust patterns. Like, if you don't know, hi, nice to meet you, I gave away my trust. If you don't know that this is where we want to be, you have to get from that point to, I have a policy. I know that if someone does this, I'm going to not like it.
Right. I think that's important. A lot of times we don't realize, when we step into a relationship, and sometimes they kind of manipulate you, they don't really show who they are. And that's why when you're stepping into a relationship, you want to slow it down. You want to take it a little bit easy. You want to start getting to know that person. And it's funny, since we just went through the hurricane, even though that wasn't funny, I used to always tell everyone, we need to go through, when you're in a relationship with someone, you need to go through all the seasons so you can really understand who they are, what they're about, how they handle things. And now I'm going to throw in a hurricane. You need to go through all the seasons plus a hurricane, and then you really start to understand what someone's like. But yeah, it is so true. And be true to yourself. I love what you say about having, that, like, a trust contract with yourself, right?
Yeah.
So saying to yourself, I'm going to set my boundaries. I'm going to make this good for us. Because a lot of times when someone breaks the trust with us, Tracy, isn't this not true? Is that when someone breaks the trust with us, we start to blame ourselves because we think that, well, we didn't pick them properly, or we didn't vent
Mhm.
them properly, or whatever. But the reality is, it's who they are, you know,
It's-
and
it
we're
is.
taking ownership of their betrayal to us. And it
Mhm.
really isn't. It's not. It doesn't belong to us. We have to set our boundaries, but we also have to set our boundaries on not taking the blame for somebody else's bad behavior. And we do that often, don't we?
Absolutely. And it comes down to self-trust with that. Because
Mhm.
if you don't trust yourself, then you're never going to. And I know we're going to talk about that a little later, but
Right.
that's the key here. Also listening to the person. A trustworthy person doesn't tell you they're trustworthy. Just for a starter. Like, my ex used to say, well, I'm the most trustworthy person in the world. And I believed him. And it was all lies, right? And so, a rich person doesn't have to tell you they're rich. A trusting person earns it, shows it every single day. So, just knowing where it starts from, and the roots of not trusting that person just because they said they're trustworthy. Just start there, right? They don't have to tell you this every single day, and then you have to know that that is kind of an untrustworthy thing. If someone comes up and goes, hey, I'm trustworthy, trust me, haha, that's control. That's not giving you the opportunity to actually know them and see if they are trustworthy. So that's a red flag for me right away. You
Yeah,
don't have
that sounds like they're like trying to take that veil off, when
to.
actually, why do
Mhm.
you have the veil on to begin with? Is
Exactly.
that, so ask yourself that. Something too, I also wanted to ask you is that we often talk about, someone being untrustworthy because of betrayal, but also it's because of abandonment, right? So let's talk
Mhm.
a little bit about that, because some people don't really understand the difference between the two and how similar they are to each other. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So about abandonment and betrayal,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
the same wound. I mean, they hurt the same. They've damaged you in a way that makes repairing this a project. You've got to figure it out now, right? When
Mhm.
someone betrays you, they break your trust. When someone abandons you, they break your trust. So it's just sort of, what are the factors that they can do? They can lie to you, break your trust, do this and that and break your trust. So those are some of the factors that come into the untrustability of somebody. It's really looking at, how would we handle it if they did that? If someone abandoned us, would we give them back trust when they come back a week later and they're done with their affair and said, okay, I'm sorry, I want you back? This
Mhm.
is the part of us learning that what we'll tolerate and what we won't tolerate. Because often when you're in a relationship and they betray, and I work with people with a narcissist and they are betrayed daily, but they keep taking them back until the narcissist decides to discard them. But it's why would we take them back? Like, again, how many chances? That's something in your trust policy. Again, you're married to them. Maybe at that point you do need to go, okay, we'll get a second chance. But how many chances does it take? How many times can they blow up your trust and hurt you before you have the self-trust in yourself to go, you know what? This isn't working for me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I dated a guy one time. He would always say, well, I'm just going to go for a little bit, and then I'll be back. Well, then he never came back again, And so that is a form of abandonment. And when you, and repeatedly doing it all the time, I didn't realize that was just kind of the way he was. So again, it was like breaking your trust each and every time. You would forgive, and then he'd do it again. You'd forgive, and he'd do it again. It's like, okay, let's get a little bit real with that. So
with forgiveness, if somebody, if someone apologizes and you forgive them, that means they don't do it again. Like, that's one of the bottom lines. If you are apologizing and I accept your apology, then I don't want to see this again, right? How many second chances do we need to give when someone's broken our trust?
Right. And then the ownership is on us when we continuously see this and we continuously let this kind of behavior happen to us. So often we see it, but we don't say, wait a minute, this isn't really for me. This isn't really what I want. So how does one do that? So let's say, for instance, you're starting to see some red signs, red flags, the signs there that things aren't really working for you, that the relationship or the behavior in the relationship isn't really working for you. How do you step out as an individual and say, hey, this isn't really working for me. This isn't right. How do you do that with someone?
Well, you set a boundary. I'll use a dumb example from my ex that I would invite him for dinner. I spent all day prepping it and doing it, and it'd come here at 7, and he would get here at 8:30. And I would be like, well, that's cruel. The food is ruined, And so I would set a boundary. And again, I'm not with him anymore because he didn't honor the boundary. I'm like, if you say you'll be here at 7, be here at 7. I'm cooking, I'm doing this. And he couldn't comply. He would always, ended up with 3 different girlfriends at the same time, apparently. So he just never made it a priority. And that's someone's character. Like, it's something you have to pay attention to. If they are constantly doing this, you've got to pay attention and you make the decision, right? Again, people stay for so many different reasons, but when you are staying and you're in a marriage or a long-term relationship, giving second chances is often the case. However, it's repetitive. What is how many times are they doing it? Do they learn and don't do it again? These are the things you have to ask yourself as you build your own trust policy. If someone does this, you're out. If someone does this, I'll let you apologize. You do it twice, then we're not doing it. Again, it's knowing what you'll tolerate so that you can build this trust in someone, and they've got to be holding their end. You can't hold someone's trust or make them accountable if they're not going to be. So yelling at them and going, I demand that you do this, show up for dinner. If they don't, comply, then why are you putting yourself in that position where someone's going to hurt you again?
Yeah, it's really honoring yourself, really. I mean, we all make mistakes. So somebody's late or whatever. I mean, I totally get that. But if it's a continuous thing,
Right.
things are not working, going the pattern, like you said, the patterns are starting to be set. It started going in, it's going in the wrong direction. Then we have to step up and honor ourselves and say, this isn't really what we want in our lives. And so tell us a little bit about the trust factors and that people need to consider before they trust again. So when we're having this happen to us and we're trying to get through and begin maybe another relationship, how do we start putting that in place for us so we don't end up in the same place again?
Yeah, well, I think one of the first things is after you've been betrayed is to be aware of your negative self-talk. I'll never trust again. People have let me down before. I have a huge I can't trust umbrella over my head. And when we think in those thoughts, we're attracting untrustworthy people, right? So it really becomes down to, how do we tell ourselves, you know what, that one wasn't trustworthy, but now I've got a plan, and I will judge people from a different perspective so that I make sure that they are aligned with what I need and what I expect, right? You expect someone to be trustworthy. So kind of taking out the stuff, the garbage in your head that you're telling yourself, that self-talk is the first step. If you are in this place and you're telling yourself you'll never trust again, you haven't found the reason and the way to trust yet. And that's the key here, right? So don't let yourself go down that. And then, when we're looking at trust, again, the first thing is we have to learn to trust ourselves. Self-trust is essential. And the question to people is, well, how do I trust myself? And it's sort of like, will you recognize when a boundary needs to be set? Again, you're showing up late all the time. This is what I expect. Do you have the courage to say that boundary? And then do you have the courage to walk away if they don't honor it? Right. So these are sort of understanding yourself. Can you forgive yourself for trusting someone that wasn't trustworthy? Right. If you don't get rid of that sort of, blaming of yourself, then you're going to end up with someone else. Right. And knowing that you'll be fooled again or not fooled again is, again, if we start there and we have a plan, then we're going to be driving down the road almost judging, almost rating, almost watching. If we are not watching, we'll have those little weird things and go, that was weird. But I say go home and put it in your journal. That felt like it broke my trust. It maybe not all the way, but it felt shady. And you start to record their trustability and remember it. Because when we've been in a long-term relationship, there's thousands of things that have happened that weren't trustworthy. But we're talking about people who are starting their life again. So this time we're going to watch, we're going to write it down, we're going to keep track, and we're going to remember that this is a threshold I don't want to go to.
Yeah, because a lot of times I believe that we attract this into our lives, what we've experienced, and we keep doing it over and over again is because we're attracting that into our lives. So we really have to think about ourselves and what, we're the common denominator. We're the one that has to make the change in our lives. So we have to ask ourselves, why is this happening to me all the time? And it's mainly because, again, as you said, we're not setting the boundaries, right? We're not doing that.
Right, exactly.
We should do. So we're going to take a little break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about setting our boundaries, about what we can do to try to really create a shift in our lives, create this difference and not always thinking that everybody is going to be mistrusting us, which is certainly not where we want to step forward. We don't want to live our lives like that. And so we also often do that. So we're going to take a really quick break. But before we do that, I want to make sure that everybody knows that we have Tracy Malone here. She's a life coach. She's a founder of Narcissistic Abuse Support. We've got the website right there. Check it out. She's got a lot of really great information on there. If you feel like you're going through a situation that things are difficult for you, you definitely want to reach out to her, and talk to her. So you can contact her on the website and be able to get some further information. She's got really good information there for you. So you definitely want to do that. You guys are listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I am Cece Shatz. We're on the Going Solo Life After Relationship Loss, and we'll be right back. Well, welcome back to Going Solo, Life After Relationship Loss. And you're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. That is our radio station. A lot of people ask me, why do we always say WGSN-DB? It's because it's our radio call letters, and we have to do that. So we want to thank all of you that listen to us loyally on our radio station, and we are so very pleased to have it. We started in radio, we moved to podcasts, and now we're to TV. And so it's a delight to be with you here on the new streaming network.com. We have our wonderful guest here with us. We love her tremendously. She's here with us. Gosh, you've been on the show several times. We've got great shows with you. You've been with on various different hosts that we have here on the network. And we want to thank you, Tracy, for helping us and supporting us and doing all that you do, because you're just a wonderful lady. We have Tracy Malone. She's a life coach. She's the founder of narcissistabusesupport.com. We're talking today about trust. How do you find trust after heartbreak? How can you step forward? In the first part of the show, we really talked about that. We talked about, how to really start beginning to set your boundaries, understanding what you're seeing in someone else. Is it a reflection upon you, or is it really that person? And then now we're going to talk a little bit about what you can do. And you had brought up in the first part of the show a little bit about journaling. So tell us about journaling and how that helps the process of trusting someone.
Sure. It's a place for you to keep track of things, right? It's a place for you to understand and put down your feelings about when someone breaks your trust, right? You have to be able to feel, I feel confused. I feel betrayed. I feel ignored. I feel like I'm the bad guy. You have to tap into those kind of emotions when you're journaling about that event. You just can't say, the jerk didn't come for dinner till 8:30 and it really made me sad. That was a betrayal and that hurt me. And you have to get out the feelings so that you are in touch with them. If you don't dig that deep, it's just going to be another hurt and you're going to let them back in and it's going to happen again. So it comes out to creating a list, and I call it the trust builders and the trust breakers. I actually have little balls. I can't find my red one. Here we go. And I have a little ball that is a trust breaker. And like, if they've broken your trusts, you better keep track. If they did something good, also keep track. So you're balancing out sort of how you're seeing them, but you have to have a list of things that really show someone that they're trustworthy. And I break it down into categories. Accountability. And I have a journal for this. It's called the Trust Processing Journal. And so it's got all of this instructions in it on how you trust and a whole much more list that I'm going to tell you here. But like starting with accountability, do they deliver on promises and responsibilities consistently? Like that's the word, because in my world of narcissists, they do it once or twice, they hook you, and then they never take out the garbage again, right? So it's got to be consistently without making you into the bad guy going, could you just take out the garbage? It's Sunday. They should know as adults that that's something that they have to do, their responsibilities, right? You don't want to be someone's mother. So watching for that is huge, right? Adulting skills. Now, adulting skills are things that do they have patience? And are they self-aware? And really checking in with where their ego is. Because if you aren't paying attention to that and all the conversations are about them versus asking anything relevant about you, warning flag, right? Do they show that they want a relationship based on equality? Think about that, right? Again, that sort of tasks and who's going to do stuff, or are they, bullying you around that they demand this or they want that? Keeping that in mind and always having that eye on equality. Do they take out the garbage? Do they just do it without being asked when it's not a Sunday, but the can is full? You want someone who's going to be an equal partner. So that comes into the adulting skills. Then do they listen to your boundaries and respect them? And do they have their own boundaries? And do they get angry with you if you set them? Do you see how any of these things are a reflection of how they will adapt? If you set a boundary and they get mad at you, that's a sign right there that maybe their trustability isn't on the up and up, right?
Right.
And then communicativeness, right? This is something like, oh, I want them to be a good communicator. Well, do they communicate their emotions effectively, or and honestly, or do they work together to solve problems? Like, think about that. And again, the people who have been betrayed in a relationship know that if someone isn't willing to solve problems and blames you, get out. It's not someone that you can trust. And again, constantly being dependable, showing up for dinner at 7 when it was supposed to start. There's a category in the journal called healthy living. And this is not that they go to the gym and they exercise or they go for a walk or anything like that. This is a no lie zone. I'm sorry, this is staying present and engaged. I jumped ahead. This is staying present and engaged, and staying abreast of issues in your life. Oh, you had a really big interview with Cece today. How did it go? Instead of getting home and telling you about their day, but not caring that you had something in your life that mattered that day and checking in with you, right? Simple things, but yet we miss these things. And then integrity comes into this thing, right? Are they authentic? Do you trust it, right? Do they say what they mean and they do what they say? Just integrity. Actions speak louder than the words. When we go back to listening to them, my ex-husband used to tell me not only that he was trustworthy, but he was integritous. He would tell me, I've got so much integrity and da 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 da. And then I would watch him steal computers from his business and go, that's not integritous. And he'd damn me for commenting or making, well, who are you to judge? They have plenty. I'm like, why didn't I think? Again, I was married and it's harder to leave when you see these things. But that would have been new person, new slate. And that's a big ass strike. I'm not going back there, right? So it's looking at situations that you've had before that people broke your trust and going, I'm not standing for that, right? Do they judge others because they're going to judge you? Are they reliable? Do they gossip? Can they be vulnerable? There's so many factors. I'm reading just a few of them for you, but if we look at all of these situations, you will find someone's trustability and be able to write it down in your journal. So you're tapping into your feelings. You're tapping into, they were really vulnerable tonight. Well, are they next week? Are they, again, at the beginning, it's always different. So consistency is the key, not looking and just judging at the beginning, because you're going to get a better picture at the beginning. It's, can they hold that mask up? Is that really them, or is it a mask? I guess is really the thing.
Right, right. Now, just a quick question, does it matter as to the extent of someone breaking your trust? Because I've been asked that before. Sometimes it's smaller things that they kind of broke and then there's something huge,
Absolutely.
So the magnitude, does that matter?
Of course. And again, that's part of your trust policy. You know what? We can have a couple of these little ding, ding, dings, and they broke your trust a couple times and you corrected them, set a boundary, and they never did it again. That's okay. It's a learning curve for you and them to communicate. So if they've broken your trust, and it's a new relationship, you can set a boundary and go, you know what, when you did X, that really upset me. And then see if they do it again. So you don't have to be all or nothing. It's set a boundary and then see if they honor it. That builds trust. So then we pull out the little green ball and go, okay, they didn't do it again. That's a good thing. But did they do something else? So length of relationships certainly matters. And I think just really having a plan for what you'll do. That's the key that people don't realize. What will I do if they break my trust? Again, low, like it's low, medium, high. What will break it? What will make it? And what's, I can tolerate them, but I'll set a boundary. And if they listen and don't do it again, then they've earned that trust ball.
Yeah, it's great advice. Great advice. And, I was thinking too about, when people start out in relationships again after, being heartbroken, you really needed to go slowly, right? Get a little bit baby steps. You don't go right all in, take it a little slower, get to know not only the person that you're with, your potential, partner, the person you're dating, but start to understand yourself. Understanding what truly is important to you, that you want to set that boundary, because we don't want to be so rigid, right? Okay, we're going to draw the line in the sand and, that's it. We we want to be able to understand ourselves a little bit more, what truly is important to us. And,
Mhm.
it's, you know, how big is the breaking the trust? What is it that's, okay, they might be a little late one time, but that isn't an end all. So it's like you want to really get to know yourself and how important things are. And and then if you have to draw the line in the sand, we do you have the strength to do that? Because I
Yeah.
think a lot of times we don't, do we? We tend to go back and try to make excuses or whatever, and we
Mhm.
don't draw that line in the sand and say,
Mhm.
no. So
Yeah.
how do we do that, Tracy? How do we draw that line?
Well, again, I think it comes to boundaries, and that's the line. Boundaries are the line, right? And so when we're using you don't show up on time when you say you're going to, if you think about things happen, like again, I got stuck in a meeting, I did this. You can be forgiving for them, but then maybe set a boundary and go, you know what? If you're going to be late next time, maybe just a call. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. It could be,
Mhm.
hey, that would really help me. But the more you start to really stand up for yourself, the more you'll see if someone is intimidated by you saying, hey, you know what, just call next time. Just send me a text. You're going to be late and I'll turn the spaghetti off. Just something that gives you a clue so that you're not sitting there in the dark. That's a reasonable expectation of somebody. And so really coming to a place where you have a concrete thing. And again, it doesn't have to be you did this, you're out. It's I listen to you, right? We set boundaries with people. When I tell people who are going out to date in my world, I go, the first thing you should do is set a boundary on your first date. And I like to tell people to say, you know what? I'm so excited to that we're meeting after talking and texting all this time, but I forgot I only have 2 hours to spend with you today. Make your own time up. I have to be somewhere. And then at that time when it's over and the 2 hours is up, say, you know what? I think that this has been so much fun. But I've got to go. And if they sit there and go, oh, come on, have another drink. It's 10 of. You can do it. We can drink it fast. Right there, you have determined that they're not listening to your boundary, right? It's just
Interesting.
a
Yeah.
small thing. You're always looking. If they say, and you're on a date and they say, you like skiing, Tracy? Oh my God, so do I. And then you go, oh, we have a commonality. And you don't ask more questions. You are not doing yourself a good service. So you turn it back to them and be like, so what's your favorite mountain? How often do you ski? Are you a black diamond, a blue, a green? Where do you go? What do you like to do? How often do you go? You are now not just believing it, but you're getting evidence of their commonalities with
Mhm.
you. Again,
Mhm.
now you're finding out, oh, we like the same mountain and you're digging deeper. But that's sort of a test of not just taking them at their word, like my husband telling me he was integritous. Well, I took it for his word. I took it when he said he was trustworthy. All of the things that I just believed him. It's question more. It's ask more questions. It's dig a little deeper. And it's not to say I don't trust you, but I'd like to know more. And that way, if we have this commonality and we want to go skiing, what's your favorite mountain is a reasonable question and a direction of questioning that gives you more insight into who they are when you're on that date. And that builds trust.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know that it takes time to get to know someone, and you start to see how they, how they behave, not only with you or with their family, and various different things. We need to believe what we see. And
Mhm.
I think a lot of women, we don't do that. And but the old saying is like a man will show you who he is in 3 minutes or something like that. So like a short period of time, and it's very, very true. But we don't want to believe what we hear. We don't want to believe what we see. And we have that, maybe that old thing where we think we can change them. That isn't going to happen.
Yeah.
So,
You and I are old enough to know we can't change them
right, absolutely.
too
But
many times.
we have to be, and looking at it from a man's perspective. Now, I want to flip the coin for just a minute because we got a few more minutes left. But also from a man's perspective, women sometimes can't be trusted either. you know.
Oh, yeah.
So trust is really a two-way street. And so it's
Mhm.
the same way. And so for men out there that are listening to the show, we want you to know that we totally get what what you say, and that you could be a very honest and a wonderful human being. And maybe it's the woman that you're being attracted to. And so you have to dig deep and ask yourself why. What is it that are you looking because you want to save the person, or you want to, that kind of thing. So often the guys on the other hand, they're wanting to come in and be the knight in shining armor, that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
um, but they're not being it's the person's not being honest with them. We want to be our own knight in shining armor, both men and women. We want
Absolutely.
to be our own individual, be true to ourselves. And so we want to be honest and have that integrity. And that's something that should be built within, and it should be your core, right? So
Absolutely.
understanding the core of an individual is
Mhm.
what's important, both men and women. So
Absolutely. And I think if you think about it again, in my world, narcissist
yeah,
world, narcissists tend to come off as the victim.
right.
So I've been the victim. So I'm a victim and they're a victim. So if you're on a date and someone's a victim, it would be important for you to be like, oh my gosh, that must have been so hard to go through whatever they just explained. What did you learn from that? Right.
Hmm.
And so what you're doing is you're validating that they were a victim, but you're going, what did you learn? Because if they come out and go, I learned that he or she was a blah 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 blah, and they go ranting off, then they haven't done their work. Because
Hmm.
I was a victim and I've done my work. I realized I didn't know what a boundary was. I didn't know what narcissists were. I didn't know what this was. I have done my work to heal, right? So finding someone who comes in and they've had this stuff. We at this age have had stuff in our life, right? So it's
Hmm.
okay, but it's sort of what you learn instead of, um, you know, oh, you poor thing, that sounds so terrible. You're going into it, and that's okay. You can have empathy for them, but you want to see the difference. Have they done their work
Hmm.
versus have they not? And they're still angry at their ex. Again, we can always be angry at our ex, but there should be something that they've learned about themselves that they need to and have done work on. That helps again build trust by finding out what was it that you struggled with, how, dig more, not to be intrusive, but to really understand their journey of healing after being a victim.
Oh, wow, that's very insightful, extremely insightful, and it's so true. It definitely is true, and which is why it's so important for us to take baby steps as we continue to get out there and start dating. We start, from a relationship loss. You're going out there. You need to really take baby steps and really go back and look at yourself. Within something happens, and as you're out there dating, and it may not be a positive experience, then look at yourself. Don't look necessarily point to the other person, but look at yourself and how you're feeling, what you're going through, and all of those kind of things. Because a lot of times the answers are from within. And so we
Mhm.
have to look at that to be able to move forward. And it's the awareness, Tracy. I mean, you've given us a lot to think about, a lot to be able to digest in a very short period of time here. But the awareness is tremendous. And I hope people will reach out to you, being a coach that you are, to be able to help walk them through some of these situations that they're going through in their life. Being a life coach and being able to do that, I hope that they will seek guidance to be able to move through, because these are big, heavy, weighted steps in order to be able to take. And there's a lot to it. And so creating the boundaries is a big step, a big thing for us to do. And sometimes we don't know how to go about doing that. And we may say, oh yeah, we're going to create this boundary. And then we find things happening to us again. We realize we never created that boundary,
Yeah.
because we let someone step all over us again. And then we're thinking, wait a minute, we've got to
Mhm.
do something different. And then we need someone like you to help us through. So I
Yeah.
want to thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. I want to say that this book, this trust processing journal, is on Amazon, and
Mhm.
it's going to give you the place and the words going. Again, there's 15 pages of watch for this, look for this, and then you go, oh gosh, I just had my first date. that sounded like that. And you're really keeping track of it. Whether you use the journal or not, just keep track of your dates so that you can know the limits and remember things that weren't quite good enough. Again,
Mm-hmm.
patterns. We're looking for patterns. If you don't write down the first time they did it, that seemed a little weird, right? Then you're not going to remember the third or the fourth time. And now you've established a pattern, but you don't remember to go back because, well, there was love bombing and happiness in the middle. So I'll just forget that. That was a one-time dinner you didn't come to. But the fifth dinner that you were late to, again, you have to make up what you're going to tolerate. That's part of
Right,
honesty.
right.
What will I tolerate? Again, there's deal breakers, deal makers. What breaks your thing? Betrayal. Yes, you're never coming back. Lie to me. I don't know if I would trust that anymore. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really knowing what you'll tolerate. That's how we learn to trust again.
Oh, good advice. So it's the Trust Processing Journal, and
Yes.
you can get that right on Amazon. So,
Mhm.
yeah, you guys run out and get that Trust Processing Journal. I think it will definitely help you. Well, this is a lot to take in, a lot of information. I want to thank you so much for sharing with us here today. I want to make sure that everybody's got your information. You just go to our website, Narcissistic Abuse Support. That's NARCISSIST abuse ABUSE support SUPPORT.com. Everything's in our show notes, so just go ahead and go to our show notes. You can go there and get the information. I want to thank you, Tracy, for being with us, supporting us, doing all that you do. We love to have you, and I hope that you'll come back again because we learn something every time you come. It's so enjoyable to be able to kind of step out of ourselves a little bit, learn something, take it in, kind of mix it around, and hopefully we're applying it to our everyday life. So we want to thank you for that. We appreciate it
Thank
so
you
much.
for having me.
Well, it is so great having you. You guys, you're listening to WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. I am Cece Shatz, the Doyenne of Relationship Building. I'm a divorce, dating, and a life coach, connecting singles on my goingsolonetwork.com. Just check that out. You want to email me? I love to get your emails. I answer them directly, goingsolonetwork@gmail.com. And I want to thank everyone here that listens to our new streaming network.com. That's where we have all of our TV, podcast, and our radio, WGSN-DB Going Solo Network. We'll catch you guys next time. I hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you, Tracy, so much for being with us. We just love having you. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.